had feedback on Speedwatch, or whether you'd like me just to run through perhaps a summary of some of the Speedwatch sort of guidelines in terms of how you set one up and so on, because you've obviously, this has all been done in the past. I see you've got at least 4 sites previously approved by the police, and you last run a Speedwatch team in February of this year.
Yeah, we have, sorry to butt in, we have, or we did have two things. One, we had a Speedwatch team with our gun, which is now redundant, and we had a Radar Lux digital response, which is now broken. So at the moment,
this is what you call the SID share, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the same SID as highways used to issue, it's a different one.
No,
right,
it's different.
Thank you. All right, thank you for that. So, I mean, some of the basis I will sort of jump, because I don't want to bore you to death on all the detail, because it will be for the, if I'm assuming that I did have a response from a member of your parish to inquire into getting a Speedwatch team up again in the absence of Bella, and but unfortunately the person became ill and sort of said that I had to put that on hold. But so I'm hoping that he will come back and he had something like 6 interested people, but not fully committed. They like a number of things. When you ask to put your hands up, you get a lot of hands shown, but when it comes to actually going the step further, then you tend to find the support wanes. But so I'm hoping that we can get you started again, but it will need probably your assistance too in perhaps encouraging some of your people to come forward to act as volunteers. As far as the nub of the operation these days is that the team normally consists of 3 people. You would have one with a device, one with a counter for counting the traffic, and one that records the details of the vehicles that are caught speeding. You can manage with 2, but that's the minimum number. After the session, which normally lasts an hour, it can be longer if people wish, but normally when standing around in the cold weather, an hour is more than long enough. And the coordinator would then send off a report to the police of the details of the vehicles caught speeding. There is a volunteer team in Taunton that will vet the details that we will send in around from the Speedwatch teams in Somerset West. They check that the registration is what you've put down as the make and model and colour of the vehicle, at least 2 of the 3 anyway. It's always difficult these days to get the models, and sometimes very argumentative about the colours, because the colours what we all perceive are not necessarily silver, but could be a blue, it could be a green, and so on. So, but the police make some allowances, or this team of volunteers make allowances. And this team, that once they're happy that you've got the right vehicle, will then add the name and the address of the keeper, and then, believe it or not, it then goes to another section, which is the Speed Enforcement Unit headquarters in Portishead, and they send out letters to all these people. The letters, there's 2 types of letters. There's one for the speed that's caught, say, at 36 miles an hour and a 30, or there's a high-end speeder letter, which is those that are caught travelling more than 43 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour limit. And they get a bit more of a stern letter rather than the education, which is the educational letter is what the police like to think the first letter is, but the second letter is saying, well, if we caught you, you would have got so many points and a fine and so on, and this is so that they're trying to get a sterner message across, cut your speeding down, sort of thing. From the point of view of speeding, the police in Avon and Somerset differ from some of the other police forces. In fact, they're not all the same anyway, but Avon and Somerset allow a tolerance of 10% plus free for Speedwatch. So in a 30 mile an hour, that means that Speedwatch teams here in Somerset would register any car speeding over 36 miles and over in a 30 mile an hour zone, which I think you're mainly 30 here. I don't think have you got a 20? I can't remember. I don't think you have. We could have a 20 mark soon, but by the school, but we're normally 30. We used to have a 30-40 sort of regime at one time, but that was all made easier by making it all 30.
Would this help, if you had volunteers, would it help get our sign moved?
No, because if I'm honest, I think that it's for the parish council to make noises to the highways. It's highways at the end of the day, because I've been through similar things in Mark, and we have succeeded in getting the 30 mile an hour extended. But I mean, it just takes time. It's on their list to do, but it doesn't mean it's next week. You know, it could be a long way away yet. But that's the process. So yeah, I mean, if you've got a speeding problem, yes, the more volunteers, the better. For moving a sign, I don't think that's the right sort of.
And where would these volunteers be situated within Brent Knoll? Have you got certain places?
No. You can. I mean, you could be outside of Brent Knoll. You don't know. You know. I mean, if you can get a volunteer from Mark to come to Brent Knoll, and that's something that we're encouraging. That we want to share information between Speedwatch schemes, so that if you've got villages, adjoining villages, and one's far more active in terms of volunteers than another, then maybe they can help each other out from time to time. So that's something we are progressing currently to try and help and share volunteers around, but it's all subject to they are volunteers. We must really not forget that fact. So
we'd like to volunteer.
Sorry?
We would like to volunteer, 3 of us.
Okay, I'll take that on board. There is a method of applying online for that, and
we can lock the door until they've signed up.
That's great. All right. Certainly, I'll take some details down, and I can forward you the links so that we can get you started, and hopefully we can get coordinated. The key thing is, yes, it's good to have the volunteers, but you need one person to actually run that group as a coordinator. So that's a key.
We'll run it as well.
Yeah, all right. But I mean, you've got, as I see it, 4 approved sites already. You may have more, but I'm not aware of them, because that's all I've seen on a report that is sent out each month, which I'll come on to a bit later. So coming to the organisation, we've got an organisation chart for Community Speedwatch, and it starts with, we're all under the Road Safety Department at Avon Somerset, and that's the person in charge of that is the Superintendent Andy Williams, which won't mean anything to you, but it's coincidence that the 3 key figures, the Chief Constable, the Superintendent of Road Safety, and the Inspector for Somerset West, they're all Andys, so I don't know whether that's a good thing for them, but that's just a fun thing. I'm not serious. The Road Safety Department has managers such as the Road Safety Manager Trevor Simpson, who looks after all the speed enforcement units, fixed and mobile cameras and so on. The person that I respond to, his title is called the Continuous Improvement Officer. His name is Damien Devaney, and he looks after all the computer applications and many other things, as well as Speedwatch lead coordinators, of which I'm one. There's 7 divisions in Avon and Somerset, and we come under Somerset West. I'm not sure if you're aware of the changes in the police set up from last October, where we have 2 inspectors now that have been sort of divided in, the empire's been divided into 2, so that all the police constables now respond to one police officer, one police inspector, and the PCSOs respond to another police another police inspector. And the idea being is that the PCs who obviously have a different method or a different regime in terms of that they have the powers to arrest, etc. The PCSO does not have the same powers. So they put I call them the operation side. The PCs now are in a line with an inspector that sort of is centralised and comes into the police operations side. So when there's a massive problem, they can call on a pool of PCs and send them out. And they're more central based. The PCSOs, who again come under a sergeant, but nevertheless are there, you're out base, and they're the local policemen that you and I should be seeing now, because the change in the regime last October was that they're reverting back to what I thought the original concept of a police community support officer was, which was to support the community. And they went away from that because they were putting all the operational stuff onto the PCSOs and so on. So over the period of time, you saw less and less of the PCSOs, and now you see, well, you should be seeing more as time goes on with this change in the organisation. And they've helped by issuing laptops to all the PCSOs and PCs, iPhones and so on. They're even getting bikes and transport to carry the bikes around to certain villages, which means that their presence out and about now should be seen far more often. If not, then get in touch with the police and say, why aren't we seeing more about PCSOs? Because that's the message that they're giving out now. That's not Speedwatch. So coming back to Speedwatch, the network, as far as Speedwatch is concerned, the police lead is Inspector Andy Pritchard. He's based at the Bridgewater Police Centre. He has divided his division up into 3 hubs, so north, south and west. So you've got a Sedgemoor, a Taunton urban and rural, and a west, which covers the West Somerset and Wellington. So that's the 3 hubs. So each have got a sergeant and PCSOs on both sides of the operation and non-operational sides. There is also, they introduced a partnership support officer. If you look on the police websites, you will see now at on your local Burnhams and Cheddars and that there is a partnership support officer there. It's Emma Ruddle in the case of us. She looks after the Sedgemoor, supports the police sergeant in the day-to-day running. Each have got portfolios, and Emma, I understand, is Neighbourhood Watch, and covering Community Speedwatch is Sharon Baker, who's based at Wellington, but she covers Speedwatch for everything in Somerset West. So I work with her on a regular basis, on contact most days, email at least, and between the two of us, we try to keep things running smoothly, helping out new teams, potential new teams, and any other problems they get in reporting speeding vehicles and so on, which the PCSOs also get involved in too. There is a speed enforcement unit based at Bridgewater, which we have a point of contact for most of South Somerset West. It's the police centre at Bridgewater where our speed enforcement unit is based. The guy that we contact there is Ian Skip. He's one of 2 the camera vehicles that go out, and we also have a motorbike that certainly comes out to mark because we don't have the pavements and so on. So we get the motorbike visit us on a regular basis in certain places that they have selected to help catch speeding and reduce the speeding. Setting up a Speedwatch team is first is to establish you've got a speeding issue. The second is to recruit the team of volunteers and appoint a coordinator, and the third is to identify sites. So some of most of that you've got the back end of it, but you've got to get the front end. Now you need the volunteers and so on in place, and I will do what I can if I to help there. And there is literature, posters, postcards, that sort of thing that the police can provide if you wanted to do a notice board and letter drops to try and find some more volunteers. That is available on request. The current, I should just add that which I'll mention in light of what two have already volunteered, that the process for the new volunteers is that they apply an online application, which is then the police carry out an NPC check on them, but it's not a deep check. It's just I assume to make sure you're not an arch criminal. If you've been caught for speeding, that doesn't debar you. It's just a question that they like to make sure they've got the right people in the jobs. At the same time as you fill out the online application, you also carry out the training stage 1 online, which is looking at a video, answering some questions and submitting that. Once that's approved, you can then, the stage 2 of this training is roadside training, where it's mainly sort of health and safety issues, looking at the equipment, how does it work, not to put others or yourself in danger and so on. It's more or less basic stuff. We currently have 27 live schemes in operation in Somerset West, 12 potential, and I've put Brent Knoll down as potential at the moment. And 1 dormant, which is Lyncham, unfortunately, because I think Lyncham would be a good thing if they can get up and running again, that maybe you could partner with the Speedwatch. Barrow is probably the next one. They do have a team, but it doesn't go out too often. That's probably, and Mark, if you're going further out. But Lyncham, I would have thought Barrow would be probably good partners. My role as lead coordinator is to, as I've already sort of touched on, is to help where we can in setting up new schemes and chasing up problems as far as delays where people have submitted applications and it's been a month or so. Okay, I'll finish by saying that the 2 things that you may have been written to on ANPR by a group, Auto Speedwatch. I'm surprised because he's written to all Somerset Parish Council.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome.
That, at the moment, it's important to note that Avon and Somerset Police are trialling this machine, but they're also checking out the legality. I know this because I attend the force level meetings, and they are not 100% happy at the moment that it will be legal. The system that this chap has trialled or is created it takes a photo of the rear number plate, not the front but the rear, to avoid photographing accidentally the driver or so on, which would then impinge on our rights and so on. So that's been looked at deeply from a legal point of view as well as the equipment itself, and my concern about this is the fact that it may overwhelm Avon and Somerset if we all decided to have this equipment, or Auto Speedwatch equipment, and we all started sending in this data that it produces. I'll sign off on that one.
Thank you.
You're going to talk about speed indicated.
We are. Yes.
If I can help in that respect, I'll help.
No, Mike, that's brilliant. Angela will give you the information to make contact with Mike, and then perhaps you can coordinate what you do through here as well, and then we can help you and hopefully expand the group. But I think it's been very interesting tonight to learn what is going on out with Brent Knoll in the area. So I think we can use it as a springboard to do something which will help you and will help the village. So I think that's really good. Mike, thank you. I'm sorry we chivvied you along a bit, but I realise you've got an awful lot of information.
Yeah, sorry, I do overrun. I do apologise.
No, don't worry. Thank you. 5, we have no planning.
There's no plan.
So, reports, footpaths.
That's all first.
Oh, where's Bob on here?
County should be on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I do apologise, Bob.
I'll keep it really brief because I know we've got a lot coming up. In terms of county, mentioned last time we were towards the end of the budget year, we've actually got the audit commission in at the moment doing their final run through the figures at county, and by the end of July we'll have a sign off from them. From the audit committee, it appears that their view is that things have obviously improved over where they were last time. They haven't given us any definite confirmation yet as to whether they will remove the sort of red flag they put over the accounts last year, where they said that they were worried about the ongoing sustainability. So we're waiting to see what the auditors come back on that. But certainly the mood music they've been giving us is we're certainly heading in the right direction. The reserves are much more healthy, and the expenditure is under control in a way that it wasn't 12 months earlier. One other thing just to mention, we've talked about sort of foster caring before. They're still very short of foster carers. There are a number of children obviously who need care across Somerset, and what they're trying to do is recruit more foster carers. They're introducing a new scheme for people to suggest families that might be interested in fostering, and there will be an introductory thank you of £150 for anyone who comes forward with those names for someone who then goes on to become a fosterer. And they will also put some money into a pot for a fund that will help pay for activities for children who are in care as well. So that is something they're working on to try and bring more people forward. In terms of Sedgemoor, one of the big things that's going on at the moment is the works that are about to be kicking off on the old ROF site. There's a new company that's taken on called Gravity, and that's going to be the name of the new site, which will cover the old ROF area. As I mentioned to you before, their plans are there'll be something like 3,000 or 4,000 jobs potentially on that site in due course. They've now sorted out compulsory purchase issues that needed to be sorted because there were some slight problems about the access to the site where some of the landowners hadn't agreed to sell the land for the road to go across. That's now been resolved, and they've actually got planned for that, so they're starting to work on the highways this year. The plan is basically to do the road first, because otherwise they'd send all the construction traffic through Puriton, which wouldn't be very helpful. So that's moving ahead. A slight knock-on effect from that, but also the fact that we've, as you know, completed our local plan at Sedgemoor recently, is that there is a significant number of large planning applications that have come in. We've got certainly large ones around the North Petherton area. Highbridge is seeing a number of applications coming forward. And again, around the Gravity site, Puriton and Wellabington have got an absolute, what's the right word to use? A significant number of large applications where you're talking about 100 houses plus per site. They could be looking at a massive increase if they all went ahead. They are all within the local plan, most of the sites, but it's worth remembering the local plan is supposed to take you through until 20. Thank you very much. So 2032 you've got, and yet all the applications have come in this first year. So there is obviously some concern there that we need to make sure that managed as best as it can. But those sort of pressures are obviously on the planning section at the moment. And just a final reminder of those who haven't registered yet, there are the 2 planning seminars coming up for new councillors and a refresher for those who've come back. If you can sign up to those, it would be well worth attending. Happy to take questions, Chairman.
Any questions for Bob? Ryan?
You mentioned last year they had the red flags,
Yes.
2018, because they said it was not in control. Why was it not in control?
What they were concerned about was that our finances going forward were not sustainable. If we carried on spending at the rate we were, and we didn't take remedial action, we would have run out of money. We would have been in the same position as Northampton, Chair.
Thank you.
That's all right. Just to show. But no,
I understand that.
but so basically what happened was, as you remember, there was the emergency budget that took place last September, which has made significant savings in various departments and rejigged funding to go into particularly the social care sections. I mean, the children's budget has actually gone up from 60 odd million to 80 odd million. So that was...
No, I just wondered why it wasn't picked up earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was...
There's a lot of money involved.
It was. And I mean, the issue was, I think all councils at times will draw down on reserves. The problem was that the county's reserves weren't going to be adequate to actually meet what they needed to draw down if they continued that way. So that was the changes that took place last autumn. And as it stands at the moment, this financial year, the reserves have now increased back to the target that we should be aiming for. They say that we should aim roughly for about 5% minimum reserves. So we're now back up to 16 million, which is approximately 5% level. We were down to about half of that last year. So that has now been set in train. And that does mean that at least heading into this financial year, we've got that little bit of leeway to work with. On the downside, we still haven't had from government the details of the financial settlement for this coming financial year. That means that of the roughly 328 million net budget of the county, there are about 58 million that is still to be confirmed from government that we are going to be receiving it. We're not expecting that we won't, but the problem we've got is, as you remember I've said to you before, that government's been taking away what was called the revenue support grant and were promising us that they would hand over a very large lump of the business rates that would be retained locally. They still haven't put the legislation through that gives us the business rates. So until that's sorted, we are waiting for government to show what they're going to do in the short term to fill that gap.
So what about the future? I mean, hopefully this will not happen again.
I mean, the plan is, if what government has been trying to do with this whole change of financing is to make local government more self-financing, so that what you raise locally, you keep locally. What's been happening up until now is things like business rates was raised locally, that was all sent up to central government, and they then handed it back as to who they wanted to give it to. They were originally going to, the proposal they made to local government initially was they were going to let us keep, local government to keep 100% of business rates. Didn't mean that Somerset would keep all of 100% of Somerset's, but it would mean local government kept it, and it would still be an element of redistribution, because there will be areas of the country that won't have the businesses to actually generate the money they need. So there is still a bit of redistribution. Government has now changed that to, they're not going to let local government keep 100%, they're going to let us keep 75%, and they're going to take the 25% off the top anyway. So, but that's the latest proposals. We still, as I say, haven't had that finally confirmed through legislation.
Thank you. I shall look forward to with interest.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions for Bob? Okay, thank you. Can we move on to 6A then now, footpaths, please?
Yes, the field which runs alongside the sidewalk, the hill field, where I think you propose to have some steps. Okay, right at the top there is a stile, a kind of stile, but at the side of it there is a gap where the farmer has put wire netting because he has sheep in that field. Well, what's happening is that people are moving it and to let their dogs through. And as a result of that, according to the farmer who lives at the top of the hill then, doggy, all the sheep got out. And obviously they wandered off because it's all open, there's woods there and everything else. And also further along there is one gate which is missing. It has been like that for a while. And so obviously they can get if they get out, they can get out further than they should do. But basically the one at the top of that field, I think, should have a kissing gate.
Yes,
Because people, you know, they don't think. So that's the one that's missing. As you walk round to the reservoir, there is one there without a gate. And I think we should have that one as well.
I think we better contact Chris East.
Yeah, because it's in the first instance.
Okay, thank you. Can I also add something to footpaths? Anything else on footpaths?
No, not at the
Okay.
moment.
I met Chris East's contractor, a bloke called Mike Watts, last week, and we walked from the back of the church to the top of the knoll. and he announced to me that Somerset had taken out 1,000 metres of strimming that is normally done at the back of the church to the top of the knoll, and that won't be done this year, and it is terribly overgrown. So that's one issue. In other words, we've got to take probably ownership of that path, and the reason I say that is because it's an important path. People visiting Brent Knoll will use that path, and it needs to be maintained in a proper order. So that's the first part. I said, how much is it to do? And I was amazed at how cheap it is to actually do 1,000 metres of strimming, and I'll tell you that in a minute. Whilst we walked the path, the lower fence up to the first kitchen gate is rotten, the posts are rotten, the handrails are gone, it's not providing any form of safety or security on that path for anyone walking. There is also a step, a lower step, that needs replacing. And on the upper path, if you walk on the upper path from the first kitchen gate to the second, to right to the top, that handrail fence is also dreadful. It really is awful. I haven't been up there for ages, but it was amazing what a bad state it was. To cut a long story short, we need 36 stakes, that's new posts put in, and we need 9 number handrails to refurbish the top path and the lower path. I've done a quick calculation. He's quoting £890 net without VAT, which works out at about £24 a post. So when you think that he's lugging all the stuff up the knoll, he's taking out the old stuff, he's boring new holes, he's reinstating the fence, that's a pretty competitive price. The actual cost of strimming 1,000 metres from behind the church to the top of the knoll is £180. And they were doing it for that, slightly less than that actually for Somerset, but he's obviously quoting 0.18, 18 pence a metre, so I think that's pretty cheap. While I saw him, I also thought, well, I'll get him to give us a quote for installing the 2 kissing gates that have got to be done over the Mills Roberts field, and he's quoted us £280, which is a saving of £70 on the amount that we propose to pay, and we can obviously save money on that. So what I would like to propose, and I realise I haven't got a second quote, but I think that this is a very competitive quote, and it's by Chris East Contractor, who is, I said to Chris, who do I go to? He said, well, you only go to Mike Watts, because he's the main man. He did all our work at the new kissing gates that are crossing the railway line, the Crooked Lane, if you've been over there, but he did that work, and he made a jolly good job. So I would like to propose, please, that we accept this quotation so that we can get that path put right, and we can get the handrails put right on the top and lower path, so that it's properly presented to the visitors to Brent Knoll who walk up that knoll. There is a step and the lower path which will also have to be done, but that's included in the price as well. That's my proposal. I don't know if anyone wants to. Yes, including VAT. Yeah. Are there any comments on that they don't like what I've done, or?
No, can I just ask Owen, just on the basis of the rules? I mean, presumably we're duty bound before, committing to expenditure beyond a certain number to have competitive quotes. What is that number?
Well, that would certainly fall within that. I mean, certainly, normally we would have to have more than one quote. In fact, ideally 3 is the standard number for that size of project. the question always is, and we've had this situation in the past, is that very often it's very difficult to get sometimes 3 like-for-like quotes, because somebody will come along and probably give a lower quote, but it's not the same job. So you've got to be very, very careful that whatever you get is like-for-like. Otherwise, the quote is not worth the paper it's written on. So, and obviously if somebody's recommended the county, for example, I suppose that does give them quite a big advantage, because they've obviously done work for the county previously.
Yeah. Mike Watts normally would do our strimming at the back of the church. He's the one that does it, but Somerset have just...
On behalf of?
Yeah, on behalf of Somerset, but they've just struck it out and leaving us to pick it up. But it is in a bad state. It really is.
No, it is.
The other problem, of course, is that if we went out for 2 more quotes now, the chances are we wouldn't be discussing it here until September. So it probably means it'll be October before we, the whole time frame is very long.
Did he say how quickly he could do it?
Sorry?
Did he say how quickly he could do it?
He does the strimming all in one go. So what will happen is he has like a strimming 2 or 3 weeks. So he'll do that when he does everybody else's. Then my guess is he will do the railings later. But he's happy to do it. He's a very competent guy. I just think we need to do something. It's been broken for a long, long time. Yes, Mark?
We have virtually a second quotation, in as much as Mills Roberts have already told us the price their supplier has given us. So I don't know whether that would count as a quote.
Certainly for the kissing gates.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, sorry, Cynthia. No, I would just like to propose that and move on. I think we have asked Coast Contracting before. I've walked the path with him and he hasn't come back to us. This is what you get.
I'd be happy to second it.
You would second that, would you? Cynthia, did you want to say something?
Yes, not about that particular project, but the path which goes along towards the reservoir. In past years, yes, it's adjacent to Mike.
Mike does that generally.
No, he doesn't. I spoke to him.
No.
He did do it, but he said it's not his job, and he said somebody did do it last year.
Okay.
Because it was cut last year, but it is a bit of a mess. But I spoke to him about it, and he said no, it's not him.
Okay, I'll ask Chris whether that is also,
Yes.
whether it was in his programme, whether that's also been cut out.
The only thing he said is that when they did it, they took obviously a 4x4 across his field, and he doesn't want to do that. If anybody goes across, that's what he said to me, so I'm just saying to anyway, but I think that'd be good if you could include it, because he certainly does want doing.
Well, I'm just asking. Yes, Bob.
A couple of things, Chairman. First was happy to support the recommendation on the basis that obviously normally we would have one quote. We have been attempting to get quotes for this site for, it must be months now. We've been talking about
12 months at
and
least.
it's been getting worse all the time. So I think on that basis, we haven't had success in getting those. This is the only one that's actually come back and given us the figures, and they don't seem unreasonable compared to what we've had in the past when we've done these sort of things. So happy to support it. The only other thing I'm going to mention, and I won't go into it now, but we also met up to talk about another footpath, which we were asked to do by the meeting 2 months
Shall
ago.
we do that when?
But we'll do that after maybe this.
Afterwards. Yeah, okay. Right, so I've made a proposal and it's been seconded by John. Are there any amendments to that proposal? Okay, so could I have a show of hands whether you accept that or not, please? Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Well done. Thank you. So, okay. Yes, sure. Yeah. Bob and I met up also to look at another footpath which we walked. Bob, do you want to?
If members remember, it was 2 meetings ago that I raised the issue of the farmer had a problem with the sheep being chased with dogs, people walking off the line of the path. This is the one that runs along Battleborough. So at the moment you've got, if you walk from the post office to the end of Battleborough Lane, you then get to what is a permissive path. It's not a full footpath, it's one that the farmer allows people to walk between the two ends of Battleborough. The official path goes through his farmyard on the far side and up the hill. But he's allowed people, as I say, to walk along the bottom. There used to be some white posts that we had done a number of years ago that showed people where they could follow the route. And what's been happening at the moment is those posts have disappeared. We found one of them buried in a hedge. And so walkers get part way across there, they then don't know where they're going, think they want to walk up the knoll and end up walking through what is farmland and with dogs been disturbing the sheep. And they've also had issues with campers setting up in their fields as well. So if you remember, as I say, 2 meetings ago, I raised the issue that he'd asked us if we could help in terms of putting some signs there, particularly just pointing people where they should be going and asking them to keep their dogs on leads. So we just went out to try and see what the route was on the ground, and I think with 2 or 3 white posts, it would be enough to see people across there as it was a number of years ago.
Yeah, if you look at the OS map, the bank is like that, and the path runs right at the bottom of the bank, and it with some posts and a little map that we would propose put on the signs, it would help people navigate themselves, and it would direct them directly then to the stile that enters the path then that runs across the back. Yeah.
It actually, if you're coming from the A38 into Battleborough, you sort of come down the road and it stops, there's a track and there's a gate. And once you get that gate, you sort of go up the hill there, don't you?
Yeah.
I thought so. And so you go diagonally along the hill until you get to the back of my Vines.
Yes. Yeah. So, shall we get some quotes for posts?
Well, yeah.
Yes, I suppose we should. Yeah. Is everybody? Could you signify that our next course of action is to get some quotes for some posts to rectify this footpath? That's the proposal.
Okay.
Thank you. Well done. Okay. Anything else on footpaths? Yes, of course, Angela. We will be in touch with you.
We've got names and addresses.
Okay, can you give them mic? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to keep you.
No, that's all right.
Hope you found it interesting.
Thank you.
Is that email addresses?
Three addresses.
Yeah, that's the emails. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Highways.
I'm concerned that the work on Park Road is still continuing. Before the work started, there were signs up on the A38 that said it would finish on the 2nd of July, but I understand they have no way of finishing yet.
Okay. Do we know anything about that?
No, I mean, well, I've been in liaison with the Highways Agency because obviously it is closed to all traffic at the moment, and one of the reasons I got involved was because there is the charitable cycle ride this weekend, which should theoretically be crossing that bridge. They will not be finished by then, and there was the possibility that would not be able to be crossed. We've had a word with the Highways Agency people. They have in fact a couple of weeks ago moved on to doing 24-hour working on that site at times. They will be in a position that there will be access across it, but it will be managed access, so some will be manning it on Sunday to allow people through. And they are aiming to be finished within about a week or 10 days after that.
Can we just suspend? Mike, you...
Well, I was only going to say, Chair, that initially that they have the permission up to the 19th of July.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Brian?
I hope you can pressurise them a bit more, Bob, because Mike Hardy and myself did the alternate route yesterday. It's about 10 more miles.
I've been swapping emails with Mike regularly.
Via Rook Bridge. Yeah. Not funny when you're my age.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Anything else on highways, Malcolm?
No, that's all I have at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. The Village Green car park and toilet block.
We'll come back at the end of it.
Is that
Sorry,
coming
can
at
I,
the end?
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Mr.
So-
Chairman.
Yes, yes,
Just one more thing about highways.
All right.
I bring it up each time, it's this crumbling road at Ann Road on the left there, it's awful. It's gotten worse and worse, just beyond the houses, where there's ladies live.
Yeah.
And I know you've reported it, can you please give them another?
I've got reference numbers for it. Funnily enough, it was one of the things that I queried, because I had a lot of reference numbers on different things that have been queried over the past. And I rang them up about 2 weeks ago, and of the 3 reference numbers I gave them, 2 of them they couldn't even find the reference numbers. Now, that doesn't sound too helpful really. The other one was okay, which was the pothole outside the tennis club, which was dealt with.
Well, publicity.
So I've asked them if they can let me have any reference numbers, but I still haven't got them, so I'll just carry on pursuing.
We don't want the job number, we want the work done.
Well, they won't do anything about a job number, of course, that's the problem. You're talking about bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Thank you.
You have to have a reference number if we're going to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item C, the Village Green car park and toilet. We've done the Village Green. So can we just, I think there's some confusion.
Well,
The devil's doing what? A
Yes.
double header. Does one want to do the car park and one want to do the toilet?
Not really.
Be democratic about it. I'll
Well,
leave
I
it
think
with
we
you.
saw David's on the email, didn't we, all of us?
Yes, yes.
A lot of it is similar to what I wrote. All I mentioned is Mr. Slocum's fence, which looks, it may not be ours, but it looks horrible. And perhaps we could work together with him to get something done about it.
Okay.
I think that was about all really.
Is the lock repaired on the gents' toilet cubicle? Because that was
It was
smashed.
working okay on
It's working.
Monday.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I looked this evening and it is
It's working. Okay.
working. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't know who follows.
David is the
He's
July
done it,
one.
he's already done it. So
Yeah,
we're,
well,
we're ahead of
Yeah.
ourselves.
for July basically. David is obviously looking after things for July, but
Anyway,
how many times you do it, I guess it's enough for you really.
Sorry
end of the
about
day.
the confusion. Sorry. David.
No, no problem.
Okay. Okay.
better than
I've always wanted an opportunity to go into the ladies' toilet. Excuse for doing
Yeah.
so.
Knock and shout. Yeah.
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 Can I
John.
say a couple of points which David brought up, quite rightly, looking at the toilets, no toilet brushes, there are no mirrors. Very simple, very cheap, and I think it's a very good idea that they should be put into the toilets, so brushes there. Although on a proper basis the toilets are cleaned by Sedgmore, the toilet brushes should be there, and so should a mirror. And I think you mentioned soap, didn't you?
In the ladies' toilet.
But it's something like that. They're not terribly minor things.
I think
And it's
more
all to do-
important in the ladies'
And you're quite
toilet
right, David,
is
it's
the
all to do
bins.
with presentation.
Yes.
And
So
so
it
we've
was
done
sanitary
the
product bins
block
in the
properly.
ladies'
Okay.
toilet.
I think it's a good idea and it would cost nothing.
Okay.
What would you like? What action would you like taken now?
Well, David,
Yeah.
David could be
Karen
nice.
Yeah, we'll speak with Karen Barnes
And ask if they could,
about what they can provide from Sedgman.
Yeah, good. That'd be fine.
Because the ladies' sanitary bins have to be emptied by approved contractors, don't they?
That I'm not sure, but I think Karen will probably tell us that, because
Yeah.
and whether the guy that comes on a Sunday, doesn't he, is authorised to clean those sort of things or clear them. I don't know why, but we'll ask Karen. She's our main contact.
It's normally a service and it just comes in, takes them, puts
Okay.
new ones in, and because
Okay.
it's
Good.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
check
check.
it out. We'll check it out. She's
Thank
a
you.
knowledge of it.
Thanks, Warren. Okay, GB Sports, or is that
Yeah,
going
let's
on?
get really on to the item later on
Okay.
in the piece.
Okay, parish surgery issues, anything this afternoon, Brian?
Mr. and Mrs. Buck came to talk about this, particularly about this ream, which we've already discussed anyway. The main concern, I think, was the health hazard. Well, I got the feeling it was a health hazard because it's stagnant water.
Right,
Years and years ago, apparently there used to be ducks swimming around on it,
right.
which indicates that there was a flowing stream.
Yeah.
Now, it's just not, it's horrible.
Okay.
And there's a great big plank, trunk of wood fallen down across it anyway.
Okay.
And it just need a good sort out, and Somerset Drainage Board have already been contacted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm seeing them on Monday,
Yeah.
and Matthew is coming and have a report. And we'll wait for the report.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
One
John.
other thing, if I might.
Yeah.
In order to save his time, John Hale, who lives just up the road from me, said, "Oh, I gather you're doing the surgery today." He said, "Can't be going there at that particular time, so can I through you, ask you to raise with Bob, is there any progress on that 40-mile-an-hour limit on the A38?
And it's still working through its system. I can check up on where we are with it. But yes, it's still moving forward as far as I'm aware. They've not said there's any problems.
Emergency planning group, this keeps coming up and we've got to address it somewhere. Perhaps we could have a separate discussion on that because it will be quite involved, I think.
And it would involve people who are not necessarily
Yeah.
council.
Yeah, okay. I think we'll park that one and have a think about it. Is that all right that we park that one and have a think about it, please? Speedwash SID updates, well, that's going to come up under matters of concern, Clerk's matters.
The only thing I would just want to point out, you saw my note that went through about formalising slightly the hours into a slightly more cohesive time frame. The problem at the moment is that it's all over the place. I mean, I can be taking calls at 10 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning and emails similarly. Most clerks that I know of certainly tend, if they're working from an office, tend to work 7 hours. And I thought it might be a good idea to, as a trial exercise for 3 months, to work it so that perhaps Monday and Thursdays between 8:30 and 1:30, I will always be available in my office at home and take any calls or whatever and deal with all the emails that crop up during those periods at that time. It doesn't preclude anybody ringing me other times. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't ring me any other times, but in terms of trying to get it down to a fairly sort of manageable level, it would seem to make more sense from everybody's point of view. You know, you should be able to pick up the phone and know that at 10:30 on a Monday morning you are going to get hold of me, because that's a working time schedule. Because at certain times of the year, clearly, I mean, for example, we go back March, April time, the workload was just horrendous. I mean, I was working all hours to try and catch up with everything. And I accept that, and that's all great. You know, I have no problem with that at all. Consequently, in July, in August, it tends to be a lot quieter. There are less things going on. So it spreads itself over a year with the 12 hours that I'm employed for by the council. So I just hope that you got the gist of what I was saying on that, and that you're happy for that to. If it doesn't work on a 3 month trial, let's try something different. But if you're happy to try it, I'm happy to give it a go.
You've got to try and remember it.
Big letters on your.
Okay,
okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Owen. A correspondence received?
The only 2 items, one's on the agenda, one isn't. You probably know about, and this is something which you probably need to be aware of the council rather than you have to do anything. The pensions regulator is very adamant that we should be offering employees all the regulatory pension options for employees. Now, as we've said in the past, I opted not to go down the pension route simply because I was under the old scheme of a clerk's gratuity, which is paid at the end of my term with you as a council, and that still holds. That still is legitimate. Any new clerk now, of course, couldn't do that. They'd have to join. You'd have to be offering a pension by law. But what I'm having to do, the pension regulator is regularly writing to me, asking me to write to my employees of the obligations that the council has to provide a pension. So what I have to do is write to myself So what I'm actually doing on a regular basis, just so you know, I'm writing a letter to myself, signed by me, to me, okay, so that I'm fulfilling the pension regulator.
Are you getting a reply?
No, I haven't had one yet. When I do get one, I'll be quite worried. But so you know, I am complying with what they're asking me to do, even though it does seem rather bureaucratic and rather unnecessary. But you need to have that in place should you decide in the future to employ a new clerk. You need to know that has been done previously in order so that there's a continuity. Okay, so it's just really information to let you know on that one. And then the other one, I've had a letter from CAB asking for a grant. As Paul pointed out earlier, they seem to write these things almost with regular sort of occurrence, really, because they used to only write it once a year, and we now seem to do about 3 a year. So whether they think we're a very generous council, so it's probably worth having to go 3 times, rather than one, I don't know. But I mean, with your permission, I'll put this on a file until we come to discuss grants. Out of grants,
Yeah.
I think it's normally about November time.
Thank you.
With your permission.
Thank you. Is that correspondence done?
That's correspondence
Thank you.
done, yeah.
8, finance and approved payments.
Mostly straightforward. The statutory payments is as usual, which is salary tax, DB Sports and JP Mayo. There's some variable payments here. I have, you may wish to have a copy of, the expenditure for the current period that ends at the end of June is somewhat higher than usual because of the quite considerable amount of cost that took place during the election process and during the audit process. And also, you remember when I put together your information packs, they comprised quite a lot of documentation which had to be printed. So the printing costs have gone up this quarter, and that is the main reason why it's higher. £123 this quarter as opposed to the same quarter last year, only £40. A massive increase in printing costs. But I will, for John, to circulate around, just for your record, so you know you've got a copy of it. If you require a more detailed breakdown at any time, I can provide you with that. So the total period is £308.69.
Could I just check in terms of the breakdown? You also take that to the finance group, don't you?
I do, yeah.
When they meet.
That's right, we have a finance group meeting. Unfortunately, we've got one in September, and Andrea, I believe you're away in September, is that right, for the September meeting?
Yeah,
So you're away, so we might have to defer the finance audit group meeting until the October meeting then. Both Colin and you are away.
There's 2 left over for David and Nigel.
Is that okay? So I'll get over till then, and we can go through that, and if you've got any queries with it.
Yes, Malcolm.
Yes, on the variable payments, you have down for Richard Mills Roberts 350. Now that, if that's going to be done by Chris East, then that needs to be amended.
Yeah, I think what I've done with both of the grants, one for the Memorial Stone cleaning and one for the Richard Mills Roberts expenditure, although I'm getting agreement from you to make the payments, I'm not actually making the payments until the work is done. So clearly the cheques will be held by me until such time as we're satisfied with the work that's been completed. But you're quite right, we need to reduce the amount that we pay.
I was at the Legion meeting yesterday, and I told the meeting and the chairman that they would get the money when the work is done. Actually, they've been in touch with Wells Cathedral,
Yes.
and Wells Cathedral cannot start until sometime in August.
Okay. So I will just hold on to the cheques until that's been completed. If you're happy with me doing something.
But we won't draw one for that.
No.
Brian.
Just to say that Richard Mills Roberts with 2 L's was delighted with his support from the Parish Council.
Well spotted, Brian. Surprised it took you as long to find that. Now the other thing is contested election fees, including grass skirts.
Yes.
That I hope you all saw that explanation and found it informative. Of £1,264, which is actually a little less than
Given the red flag.
As you know, we've been putting £200 and something a year in the contingency for the elections as and when they came up. They came up this year, and actually we haven't used all of the contingency, so we can now put that forward for the next period when that situation arises. There's a late invoice item from E.ON. Sorry, Rob, do you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry. It was just on the election fees. In terms of the contingency, it's worth bearing in mind that obviously because there was a district election and a parish election on the same day, some of the costs were shared